Hello, I'm your host, Young Morpheus. I was going over some videos and I noticed this old one sitting back in my in one of my playlists, and it was a video where we went on the Franc Analysis, and we were going over some of the stuff with Russia and Ukraine. And I thought it was a really good video to be able to share where us, the political matrix, where we were at that time frame, and kind of show where things are today. So I figured that I would share this clip with you. Below, I will disclose the full clip from the Frank analysis, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna start with our first topic here on the US hyping up the Russia Ukraine situation, in which Russia had moved around some troops, and the US was saying that Russia is preparing for war. Here we have Russia's envoy. This was reported on Press TV on Monday, January 31st, so just yesterday. Russia's envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, says that U.S. is trying to whip up hysteria over Ukraine with the UN meeting. So Vasily Nebenzia said the UN debate session, which was held on Monday, was an attempt by the U.S. to mislead the international community about Ukraine and the current outburst of global tensions, and that the initiative was an example of megaphone diplomacy. So Nebenzia also accused the U.S. of fomenting unfounded allegations against his country, and said there is no proof Russia is planning to invade Ukraine, adding that the talk of war by the U.S. is provocative. So that's something we should be asking ourselves, because the mainstream media is saying, oh, we've heard from insider informants, but they don't disclose who those are, that Russia is preparing to invade Ukraine. But as what's stated here, there is no evidence of that. The U.S. representatives to the UN had earlier claimed that the Russian deployment of more than 100,000 troops along Ukraine's borders justified the debate at the UN Security Council with the Russian envoy, dismissing the allegation and saying Russia has frequently deployed troops within its own territory without causing hysterics. So imagine the U.S. just moving their troops around on the border along Texas or its southern border in front of Mexico. Does that mean that the U.S. is going to invade Mexico just because they're moving troops around within their border? And then here we have Ukraine's President Zelensky urging the West not to stir panic over imminent invasion by Russia. So he says, I don't consider the situation now more tense than before. There is a feeling abroad that there is a war here. That's not the case, Zelensky said at a news conference with foreign media on Friday. Now, I was seeing a clip. I was watching a segment from CNN one day when I was waiting in a hotel to meet up with Pasta and Fiorella when they were here in DC. And in the CNN clip, it was as if I was watching Fox News's neocon propaganda from the 2000s, saying fear mongering about, oh, we need to protect Americans, and that's why we need to ensure their safety. We need to take initiative. So what will you do in an interview with Antony Blinken? What will you do, Blinken, to ensure the safety of Americans? So I want to get your thoughts on this, panel. What do you think about this?
You know, nowadays when I hear the U.S. trying to foment a war overseas, I guess for me, I'm always paying attention to like what's going on while like everybody's focused on that. You know, what's the bigger picture? You know, you hear, because if I look at the concept of the war, I mean, it all seems very patternistic. There just seems to be a lot of special ops, clandestine people saying there's trouble here, there's trouble brewing in Ukraine. Where have we heard that before? So I'm depressed that Marcus was like Nostradamus and pretty much predicted like most of this like months ago, and I honestly did not believe him when he said it at first. And I know he's grinning real big when I say this, so
I am.
So yeah, it's just depressing to see like the same old pattern over and over again. And then of course we'll all bring it up, and then of course we'll all get throttled or suspended or kicked off or just hounded by trolls because we're telling the truth. And then what, like decades later, someone will say, "Oh wait, Franco was saying this is wrong like days ago. Chris was saying this wasn't right days ago. L threw up research L threw up research about that." So I see where the end of this is going, essentially. Yeah. And that's what depresses me.
Aren't you guys seeing similarities to... I was seeing a lot of memes, like people on TikTok also talking about, oh, World War III is about to happen.
Exactly.
Because they're buying into the propaganda here. It reminds me of in 2020, January 2020, when people were making a bunch of memes about World War III starting because Donald Trump assassinated General Qasem Soleimani of Iran. Although that was a direct attack on the US's part to Iran, people didn't really understand what was going on. Similar here, a lot of Americans, a lot of normies who are making all these memes don't understand what's going on and don't realize that in this situation, it's nothing. Both Ukraine and Russia said that the West needs to stop stirring this up.
Well, only area where I would kind of interrupt you there. I wouldn't say it's necessarily nothing, because there's a bunch of different things at play this time around. You have oil pipelines that are involved, so there's money involved in trying to get involved in Ukraine and trying to block Russia. Russia is just moving their troops around, because they feel like it. I mean, it doesn't. They're within their own borders. It doesn't really matter what they do. It's nobody else's business, really. But the fact that our government wants to send in weapons and get involved is something which is going to add to provocation. Another thing is trying to get, countries that are in the Eastern Bloc into NATO. That's another provocation. Another thing is you have weapons companies who would like to see something going, maybe not to the level of a full blown war, but would like to have an excuse to be able to sell some weapons. And then you have another angle, which a certain organization starts with the first letter of the alphabet and ends with PAC. They have a vested interest. Also, you have people of a certain faith, about 75,000 of them, who, if there is some kind of conflict under the right of return, it allows 75,000 more people to move back to their so-called homeland or promised land. And so you got a bunch of different moving parts. And normally when you have all these moving parts, all it takes is for one thing to kind of go the wrong direction. Now, do I believe that World War III is going to be kicked off by Russia? No, I honestly feel like if we're looking more towards a World War III type of situation, it's going to be when all of these, it's going to be a lot of different chain of events that are going to happen. And the whole situation with, you have tensions rise between Russia, Ukraine, and then you have the China, Taiwan thing. As more of those things kind of go back and forth and heat up, how I see it is it's kind of more of a slow motion car wreck. They're trying to be, it's kind of like, with Iraq, their goal was to have light, have kind of a light war, if you will, and to just kind of go in, kind of use some weapons, not really get completely bogged down, but for the weapons manufacturers to be able to sell a lot of guns. And I look at this as a similar kind of situation that can start off as one thing and can get you into something else.
Yeah, Chris and Al, what are your thoughts on all this?
Oh shit! You got.
What happened?
You still hear me?
Yeah.
You're good, Marcus.
Sorry, I thought you finished.
Oh, I know my signal's about to get really bad for a second here, so somebody else take it.
Yeah, Eller or Chris, what are
Al,
your
jump in,
thoughts?
Al. Go ahead.
Hello. So yeah, I did a little research about the connections, bringing it back to World Economic Forum, who I represent, um, and as Klaus. So yeah, Russia, Russia's prime minister, prime minister, Vladimir Putin attended in 2021 the most recent Davos conference, which is annual. And before that, we had Zelensky in 2020. And before that, Joe Biden in 2016 and 2017. I went over a little bit on my podcast, shameless plug to superawkwardfuncast.podbean.com. And I also went over it on the last episode of the Political Matrix, which was on Saturday. And so I won't get too into the weeds with that situation, but there are connections to these power players. It just kind of presents to you that not everything is as it seems in terms of the conflicts and what is really going on behind the scenes. Like E said, Emmanuel was saying that, what are we distracted by with this story? Like the ramping up of war
Jeez.
talk in the media and everything. I've seen a bunch of their conferences or the press briefings, even the State Department one. Oh, that one's really hard to watch. I skipped a lot of that one because it was just Ned Price is just he's too much. Saki at least has some kind of personality to her, but he does not. But what do you expect? He's former CIA for fuck's sake. So anyway,
Who is?
Ned Price.
Oh,
I looked him up. He was one of the advisors, I think, for the Obama administration back in the day, and I think he got out in 2017 from the CIA. I just looked him up on Wikipedia and found that out. Yeah, he's a former intelligence officer, was involved in a lot of shady shit, and yeah, that was. Let me see here. I cannot find it. 2013.
Real quick, if I could.
Oh yeah,
if I could
2006
jump in real
until
quick, Al.
2017. It was 2017, which was and he's 39. He's pretty young, so he's been in that realm for a while. But anyway, he's the State Department guy, and he was speaking, and so it's just funny hearing them talk in these conferences about like the Russian aggression and the bellicose rhetoric and the invasion potential. Dude, at least they're right next to the country. Like Iraq is far, far away from the U.S. and you got soldiers there, and you got people in Syria and Afghanistan until recently, of course. But it's just stay out of your. You know what? How about they solve poverty in the U.S. and then they can go fuck with other countries? There, that's my compromise. Figure out poverty, then
or
go
in
to
the
another.
world.
Yeah. I mean, they could solve it for the world. You're correct, but like, even just here, just try get some homeless people into some good situations, and then we can talk about other situations in other places. But you can't even say anything because you invade countries one after the other. So, and they have the military in multiple countries that they're not even having direct conflict with, but they just have them there and like embassies everywhere. So fuck off. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, Chris, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I just want folks to remember that I do believe that Ukraine is becoming more friendly with China, is becoming friendlier with China than the United States likes. If you just do a couple searches for Ukraine-China relations, you can see that they're getting close economically speaking. I'm not saying they're like they're in bed together, but it's just interesting. It's one thing to keep an eye on, especially whenever you take the Russia Ukraine situation and you mix it with what's that old guy's name from yesterday, Al? Um, damn, George Soros. You know, everybody, the righty's favorite guy. You know, with George Soros's comments about, you know, China. Um, you know, when we put that together, it just seems as if this is the United States multi-pronged foreign policy, which is to go at everything Russia, go at everything China. So if Gog and Magog decide to turn around, if, you know, Russia and China decide to, you know, double team the United States, then it is what it's going to be. But we do have to keep in mind the relationship with China.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did these like negotiations with China and Ukraine start, or were they always there? They're just getting closer with each other now.
I think it was like within the last several months that I think there may have been some kind of deal. If Ukraine didn't sign anything saying that they intend to get money with China, for lack of a better term, there's definitely been discussions that Washington is aware of that they don't like. So with that being said, um, they can use Ukraine in a way that they couldn't use Italy, right? Because the EU and the United States were both also upset with Italy for strengthening their economic ties with China. In the case with Ukraine, they see a secondary opportunity. We can give Ukraine a problem, and we can blame Russia on the world stage. So again, like most other things, it's all theater, and we have to look a little bit deeper than what the headlines are.
Yeah,
Hey,
for
Chris,
sure.
just to interject real quick, not too much. But funny you mentioned China because in the Davos 2022 special address, we had Xi Jinping. So all the major players are involved with the World Economic Forum, just to bring it back to that. And then,
So I just wanted to add a little bit of background here on what has led up to this, some history here that's mentioned here in the article. Relations between Ukraine and Russia have been deteriorating since 2014, when the then Ukrainian territory of Crimea voted in a referendum to fall under Russian sovereignty. The US and the EU backed Kiev, refusing to recognize the referendum results and later imposing sanctions on Moscow. Ukraine, as well as the EU and the US, also claimed that Russia has a hand in an ongoing conflict that erupted in the Donbas region of Ukraine between government forces and ethnic Russians in 2014. The West imposed sanctions on Russia after accusing it of interfering in conflict. Moscow denies the allegations. Do you guys have any comments about that? Or do you guys know anything about that?
Well, the thing about it, what we have to always keep in mind is with the whole Russia Ukraine thing, there's multiple factions, and we can't look at it like it's a united front. Um, you literally have two different factions inside of Ukraine. You have a Ukraine, well, more than two, but the two major factions is you have a side which is, you know, partial to the neo Nazis, or not really neo Nazis, the flat out Nazis. Then you have another side which is partial to the Ukrainian government, which wants to be a part of Russia.
I meant to say a part of NATO.
Then you have another faction, which is Ukrainians, which want to be isolated. And so you have these three different major dynamics that are going on inside of the nation, which are all playing against each other. So when they talk about the deterioration, it is with the Nazi faction, which would like to stay separate, and then you have the pro-Ukrainian faction who wants to stay separate. But you do still have a large chunk, which are Russian-speaking Ukrainians who still feel affinity towards, you know, their former mother country.
And with how things are right now, isn't it inconvenient for Russia to go to war with Ukraine right now, like economically for them?
Yeah, it would be, because there are so many deals. Well, yes and no. It would be inconvenient in the short term, but in the long term, it would give them a lot more control over oil reserves and pipelines, which are within the Ukrainian borders. So they wouldn't have to work in a partnership. They could just straight out take it.
And as far as the U.S., I mean, if they're hyping this up, fear mongering about an imminent, quote unquote, imminent war, this is only going to help the weapons manufacturing companies. So have you guys heard any news about stocks going up for the U.S.'s weapons manufacturing companies like Boeing and Raytheon?
I haven't really heard anything about stocks going up, but I have heard a lot of chatter about weapons manufacturers who, well, they get on CNN, MSNBC, all these channels, and then act like they're nonpartisan, just concerned, citizens are doing their political analysis. But in actuality, most of them have stocks or on the boards of a lot of these weapons manufacturers. So I have seen that aspect so far.
So we talked, I think it was either Marcus or E who were here for this. Biden's number is going down. Like he's becoming, his approval rating is going down by a lot. People are upset with him not doing the things that he claimed he was going to do with student loans, him exacerbating the oil and climate change crisis, him giving more money to the military. But whenever a president acts like they have like a hard hand when it comes to foreign policy, then the mainstream media starts speaking positively about the president. They did this with Trump when they were like, oh, Trump is acting presidential when he fired drones at Syria back in, I think it was like 2017 or something. They were like, this is Trump's most presidential act that he's done. So do you think that Biden may be doing this, maybe helping to stir this up in order to get his approval rating back up?
I think I know what you're talking about. Go ahead, Chris.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that it's probably a combination thereof of all three, right? It could be something to help his approval rating, for one, because they pay attention to shit like that. So do the masses, right? Or the sheep, I shall say. Secondly, two, you got to remember, there's a lot of I won't say a lot, but there are several European countries like Poland that comes to mind that are no longer taking such a harsh stance towards China. So the United States is one by one in region over region is losing their influence. And as much as these secondary countries, again, for lack of a better term, are afraid of the United States response, they are too turning towards China saying, you know what, I don't have to keep this same level of rhetoric towards you that we did in the past that Washington urges us to keep doing towards you. So it's just something to look at, because Poland is another one that's like, fuck you, we're going to the Olympics, part of my language. They're going to the Olympics, not that means something to us or to the people, but symbolically, the United States would love nothing more than for their quote unquote allies to like stay away from Beijing. But that's not happening.
Yeah, if anyone wants to follow up with that, go ahead.
L, E, you guys want to take it? Or I'll hop in if you don't.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I particularly remember that moment when Trump first started, and then this big call, he did this big call for war, and then it's all of a sudden went from, oh, he's a joke of a president to he's very presidential. He's a good president. You shouldn't disrespect him. So I see that.
Yeah, we're gonna name names. That was Van Jones's chest on CNN. So I just want to say,
who was it that was like orgasming when he saw the drones Jones. And was like, such beautiful drones. Right. Look at that. My goodness.
I just came in on orgasming.
It was Brian. One was Van Jones, who was like, he's really presidential.
Oh my god.
And then the other pendejo was Brian Williams on MSNBC. The beautiful the beautiful marks from the drones in the skies. Like,
Goodness
and people eat
gracious,
that
those are
shit
gonna
up.
kill people. But of course, they don't care because, I mean, who funds these mainstream media outlets, right? It's these weapons manufacturing companies. So they're in it for war. Like, these people are going to propagandize for war and fearmonger for them. It makes their ratings go up. And as we see, like, it translates, and we see normies, a lot of them buy into this and start making memes about it.
Yeah, I would add in, like somebody said before, nobody wants war with Russia. We don't want war with Russia. Most people don't want war with Russia, but the people who are in power, plenty of them do want war with Russia. People like Mitt Romney has been talking about Russia being the biggest threat for God knows how long. Hillary Clinton and her clan, her whole clan of people have been talking about Russia, Russia, Russia being the enemy. You think about Rachel Maddow with the whole Russia gate. All of these
My
people have
gosh.
been talking about Russia, Russia, Russia. It's so dangerous. Russia is so evil. So we can't get into this mindset. Oh, nobody wants war. No, there are people who want war. Is it smart to want war? No, but there are people who want it. And also, we got to remember, I think it's a good, well, I was going to say that's a good analysis that you said. Is it a possibility that because his poll numbers are dragging so bad that he might want to try to drag us into a situation like this? Well, let's go back into history a little bit. With George Bush Jr., his calculation in going into Afghanistan and Iraq was
Yeah.
the fact of his father's poll numbers shot through the roof with Desert Storm.
Yeah.
So there is a precedent of the whole wag the dog kind of situation. And I
Well,
think that,
remember,
yeah, go
and
ahead.
Marcus too. I was gonna say, remember, the Olympics start, I think, this week in Beijing. So you also got to remember that's another major thing because people tend to watch the Olympics. A lot of the masses, right? So you have to get all this out so it can come up during the broadcast, and you can have these stupid conversations and make these
Who
stupid
shows up, who
comments.
doesn't,
And
who makes a show for
correct,
solidarity. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
because, be,
It's
yeah, I
all
was going to
part of
say
the show.
because I was going to say, like, granted, some of our, like, people in the entertainment industry, they're scared of China because they can lose big money with them. But our legislators are not the same as LeBron James being scared to criticize China. They're not in the same shoes because they're getting funded and have different motivations than than those same people in Hollywood or in the entertainment world. So that's something that we always have to put into calculation. I mean, most of these wars, it's never what most of the country wants to do or what most people on either side wants to do. It's what a small select group of people decide in their head they want done, and then they start formulating and prepping the public for it, and then they start pushing, oh well, I think that this can happen, and then what happens, some singular event randomly happens, or perfectly timed for everybody to say, you know what, yeah, I think that's what we need to do. We need to go and fight here, we need to go and fight there, we got to have a response. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Damn, man. I was gonna say something, but I lost my train of thought here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's
No, it's
all
all
the
good.
time, man. It's all good.
I was checking the Rockfin to make sure that it was live. Um, but damn, man, like even a lot of the liberals, right? They push for they don't want to go to war, right? These working class liberals, but they've been manipulated. Their consent has been manufactured by the media into thinking that, well, this is what needs to be done. I mean, look at Russia. Like, we need to stop them from doing this. Like, the mainstream media has made them believe that this boogeyman has to be stopped. And a lot of it is also rooted in all this other propaganda and movies and stuff about glamorizing World War II and how, oh, we can't let something like that happen again, where an evil country does something and then the U.S. has to step up, ignoring in these movies how a lot of the banks, U.S. banks, helped fund these Hitler's Nazi Party. Correct?
And entirely correct. Oh, go on ahead.
I was going to say correct. I mean, you know, a very, very small few group of people, very, very rarely real. There's very, very few that realize how much how much banks help the Nazis. Operation Paperclip, stuff like that. They don't ask. They don't question. They don't ask. They don't ask any questions. They just say, I mean, what I was. It probably was like a year or so ago that I knew that the Soviet Union was part of the reason World War II was stopped, and then because of American propaganda, America kind of just took it over and said, "Oh, we're the reason it stopped. We're the reason it happened." Essentially, so
they don't
even
teach us that in high school history.
They don't.
Or before that, about the significance of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask the average American, they would have no idea. Instead, they're made to think like, oh, like Russia was also like evil, like Germany, like with Stalin and everything. And granted, they have done some bad things too, but that we can't deny the historical fact that the Soviet Union played a significant role in weakening Germany. And even it's seen even in The Hilda Rising. Like a couple months ago, I saw that one of the hosts, she had no idea that a big reason for why the U.S. or for why the Allied forces won against Germany in World War II was because of the Soviet Union. She's like, no, it's because of the U.S. And it was even Ryan Grim that had to educate her.
Rolled so far back they almost got stuck there. I was just like, you gotta be kidding.
Someone said Ryan Grimm's big moment.
I just rolled.
John Masters.
Oh, sorry. So one thing I would throw in there real quick is even when you deal with people who are pretty knowledgeable on history, there are so many blind spots intentionally, put in our education system so that we don't see all these. You look into a lot of where your textbooks were from, I guarantee you, there's probably about a 3 out of 4 chance, a 75% chance that your textbooks came from the Rockefellers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if people know why that's significant, but if you have one group of people who have a biased interpretation on something, they're going to decide what they want to put in, what they want to take out. Same with the Daughters of the Confederacy, which had a big influence on a lot of the Southern books.
And they have a big influence on, like in the medical field, medical schools also, like what information gets put in textbooks there, in the science field, biology textbooks, all of that. It's all pro U.S. or mainly things that won't make these people that are really in control, that won't make them look bad. And it's going to help promote some of the stuff that they own, like petroleum-based medicine.
Well, too, it's also to frame the narrative. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, what is it that I think it was in Texas. I don't remember the city or the county, but they had the textbooks where they said slaves were the migrant workers, right? So just to use that as an example, they'll just try to manipulate the narrative and fuck your mind up so you get further and further away from the truth. It's just like how they present 9/11 in school. I remember my son, the teacher didn't like his views on 9/11 because it was different from what they were talking about. But that was because clearly he heard me at home.
Now, I want to give a shout out here to Shadowban Refugee. Thank you very much for the donation over there on Rockfin. Said, Orale fam. A good friend of the show, good friend of this show, and good friend of the Political Matrix. He also says, we cannot ignore that Ukraine has been the battleground of empires for a millennia. The Soviet Union took Ukraine by conquest in 1918 after giving it to the Central Powers in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Ukraine declared its independence from the Red and White armies, both the Makhnoshina was the self-declared free person. The West is funding goons that piss on the legacy of the Miknovia. Right, these are literal Nazis that are there in the border of Ukraine on the west side that like if you look at them like literal Nazis with tattoos of the swastika that the U.S. is giving arms to and weapons, aid. So, any thoughts on that comment by Shadowban?
No, and
Um,
it's ironic that they would make all of Ukraine appear to be anti-Semitic, but isn't the president Jewish? Isn't the like top two or three people in Ukraine, aren't they Jewish? So it's just kind of weird how all of this stuff is described. It's no facts. They're facts, but they're twisted. Um,
Spin and
Ukraine has
deflection.
correct. I agree with Shadow. Not agree, like Shadow was right. It has been the battleground. This is nothing new. This takes me back to 2008. Remember John McCain, Mr. Short Arms? We're all Georgian, or whatever the fuck he said.
Yeah, every little monster with his little. They would make fun of him for being like a T-Rex for having his little arms. John McCain, right? um, but yeah, you mentioned how they're moving beyond
He
just
does have
having.
John. He does have T-Rex arms. So.
But they're
Yeah.
moving.
Oh,
My
no, go
bad,
ahead.
Marcus. I was gonna say they're moving beyond just having troops on the ground too, right, Marcus?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and shout out our brother over there. Um, well, this situation's always interesting because everybody looks at these situations kind of individually, and how we need to start looking at all these situations is all interconnected because they all are interconnected in real life. And so when we have the Soleimani situation over here, then we have bombing in Yemen, and then we have stuff going on in Ukraine. All of these things are all tied together, but we've been taught to look at them, sectioned off. And until we start looking at them all as how interconnected, then we don't see the full entire picture.
Yeah, 100%. That's why we got to stay updated. Look at all these different stories from all these different outlets and put all these stories together. Inform yourself on history. Put all these pieces together, like Marcus said.